A few years ago, I was driving alone through a small, desolate part of my hometown, just outside the city, when I saw a man standing by the side of the road. He was in his early 40s, wearing a tattered fishing hat and carrying a small bag. The area was mostly wooded, with just a few scattered houses. He looked lost, and without thinking much about it, I decided to pull over and offer him a ride. As he climbed into my car, I felt a strange sense of unease, but I tried to brush it off. He smiled at me, his teeth yellow and crooked, and we exchanged some small talk. He said his name was Tim and that he had been walking for hours. He seemed nice enough, though there was something off about the way he spoke, his eyes darting around nervously as if expecting someone. I drove him a few miles down the road, keeping to my usual route. As we neared a sharp turn, I noticed that there was an old, abandoned house off to the side, hidden behind overgrown trees. Tim suddenly tensed up, his eyes locked on the house. He muttered something under his breath that I didn't quite catch. "You should really be careful around here," he said, his voice low. "Not safe to be out alone." I laughed awkwardly and told him that I knew the area well, but I didn't like the way he looked at me now, like he was sizing me up. I was just about to ask him if he was okay when he suddenly leaned forward, his breath hot and foul against my ear. "There's someone else in the house," he whispered. "I don't know if you should keep going." I slammed on the brakes. His warning made my stomach drop. "What do you mean? Who's in the house?" I demanded, but he was silent now, his eyes wide with terror. The silence between us grew, thick with tension, until the only sound was the rhythmic hum of the engine. Then, something changed. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement at the abandoned house, a shadow darting past a broken window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Go," Tim said urgently, his hand gripping the door handle as if ready to bolt. "Don't stop here. Don't even look." Without thinking, I floored the gas pedal, driving faster than I ever had before. The man didn't say anything else, but his presence felt heavier, more suffocating. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting someone to be chasing us, but there was nothing, no one behind us. Tim, however, was still staring at the house, his eyes wide with fear. We finally reached my house, and I quickly pulled into the driveway, desperate to end the strange encounter. Tim didn't even thank me as he hurriedly got out of the car. "Don't tell anyone," he said before slamming the door behind him. "You don't want to know what's out there." I never saw him again, but the unease that settled in me never left. A week later, I heard a news report about a body found in the very same house where Tim had warned me about. They said it was an unsolved case, and the police were still investigating. But one thing I knew for sure: I had been warned, and something had been watching me that day. Something dark, something dangerous. A few years ago, I was driving home from a late-night event, feeling a bit tipsy but still in control. It was a quiet evening, and the streets were nearly empty. As I took a familiar shortcut through a dimly lit back road near my neighborhood, I spotted a man standing by the side of the road. His figure was oddly still, almost like a mannequin under the flickering streetlight. He looked to be in his 40s, dressed in dark clothing, and had his thumb out as if waiting for a ride. Normally, I would never stop for a hitchhiker, especially on a deserted road, but something about him made me pause. His expression was strange, almost unnerving. I had a feeling he wasn't just another person in need of a lift. Still, I convinced myself I could just help him out. It was the right thing to do. I pulled over and rolled down my window slightly, asking if he needed a ride. He looked up at me, his eyes wide, too wide. He gave me a slight, eerie smile and said, "Yes, please. I just need to get home." His voice was unsettling, and despite the warm evening, a chill ran down my spine. My gut told me to drive away, but I ignored it and unlocked the door. He got in, but something felt off. As I drove, he didn't say much. His hands were clenched tightly in his lap, and he kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye. After a few minutes of uncomfortable silence, I broke it by asking where he lived. He hesitated before giving me a vague answer about a place not far from here. I asked if he had been in town long, and he said, "Not long enough." The air in the car grew heavier, and I could feel his eyes on me, like he was studying every move I made. I kept my hands tight on the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as we approached a sharp turn onto a dark road that led toward a more secluded area. Just then, he suddenly shifted in his seat, leaning closer to me. "I've been waiting for you," he whispered, his breath cold against my ear. "I know where you're going." I froze, the words echoing in my head. How did he know? I hadn't told him where I lived. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Pull over," he demanded, his voice low and urgent. My heart raced as panic set in. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew I needed to get away from him. In a split second, I swerved the car onto a side road, the tires screeching as I slammed the brakes. I immediately threw the car into reverse and backed up as fast as I could, hoping I could escape. He didn't fight me. He just sat there quietly, watching me with those unnervingly wide eyes. As I sped off, I looked back to see him standing in the middle of the road, watching me drive away. His smile was gone, replaced by an expression of quiet satisfaction. I didn't stop driving until I reached my home, and I locked every door behind me. The next day, I heard a news report about a body being found on that very road, just a few miles from where I had picked up that man. The police said it appeared to be a recent murder, and they hadn't found the killer yet. I never mentioned the incident to anyone, but to this day, I can't shake the feeling that the man I picked up wasn't just a hitchhiker, was something much darker, and somehow, he had been waiting for me. A few years ago, I was traveling alone on a road trip through a remote part of the country, heading toward a small town I had never been to. I had been driving for hours, the landscape becoming more desolate with each passing mile. As night began to fall, I realized I hadn't passed any signs of civilization for a long time. The GPS was glitching, and I had no cell service. A bit unnerved, I started to look for a place to stop for the night, but the area seemed deserted. That's when I saw him, a man standing by the side of the road, dressed in a dark jacket, looking up at the sky. His posture was odd, almost stiff, like he hadn't moved in hours. His eyes were wide and unblinking, staring into the distance. There was something off about him, but I told myself I should be a good Samaritan and offer him a ride. Maybe he was stranded or lost. I pulled over and rolled down the window, asking if he needed help. His gaze never shifted from the sky. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raspy. "I need to get to the gas station up ahead. It's not far, just down the road. Please take me there." I hesitated, but he didn't seem threatening. I unlocked the door, and he slowly climbed in. The air in the car felt thicker as soon as he closed the door behind him. I noticed his hands were clenched tightly, his knuckles white. As I started driving, he didn't speak much, just stared ahead, his face expressionless. We drove in silence, and I kept my eyes on the road. The deepening darkness outside made me feel uneasy. The more I tried to make small talk, the more I noticed that he wasn't responding. It was like he didn't hear me at all. And then, as we approached a sharp bend, the car suddenly jerked, like we hit something. I slammed the brakes, but when I looked around, there was nothing there. "Did you feel that?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. The man didn't answer. He just slowly turned his head toward me, his eyes now eerily wide, too wide. His mouth twitched into the faintest smile. "Did you feel that?" he repeated in a monotone voice. I felt my heart race, and something in my gut screamed that I had made a terrible mistake. But before I could react, he reached over and gripped my arm with an unnatural strength, pulling me toward him. "Stop the car," he demanded in a whisper. "It's time for you to understand." Suddenly, the headlights flickered and the car stalled, as if we had entered a different world. The road ahead seemed to twist and warp, and I felt a cold rush of air sweep through the car. My body went numb, and I couldn't breathe. Everything around me seemed to freeze. The man beside me leaned closer, his face inches from mine, his breath hot and fetid. I managed to scream and jerk away, but the car wouldn't move. The engine sputtered, refusing to start. In the next moment, the man disappeared, vanished into thin air. The car started again on its own, the engine roaring to life, and I sped down the road, no longer daring to look back. When I reached the nearest town, I found out that the gas station he had mentioned had been closed for years. I told the locals what had happened, but they just stared at me blankly, as if they didn't want to acknowledge it. Later, I found out that there had been rumors about strange happenings on that road for years. People disappearing, strange figures seen standing by the side of the road at night, and cars stalling for no reason. That to this day, I can't explain what happened, but every time I drive down that stretch of road, I can't shake the feeling that something is still out there waiting. A few years ago, I decided to take a spontaneous trip to a small town deep in the mountains, far from any city lights. I'd heard about it from an old friend, and he told me it was the perfect place to escape the noise and chaos of daily life. I was excited for the peace and quiet, but little did I know that I was about to step into a nightmare. The town was small, almost eerie, with only a handful of houses scattered around. The locals seemed friendly enough, but they all had strange, vacant eyes, as if they were hiding something. I checked into a small inn at the edge of the town, which seemed almost deserted. The innkeeper, an older woman with thin, graying hair, greeted me with a strange smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She gave me the key to my room without saying much else. As night fell, I decided to explore the town. It was incredibly quiet. The streets were empty, and the houses were all dark. But as I walked further down the road, I noticed something strange. There were old, weathered signs posted along the roadside with cryptic messages. The watchers see all, do not stray after dark, they wait for the lonely. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, but I brushed it off as a coincidence. I made my way back to the inn, but just as I was about to enter, I heard faint whispers coming from the woods nearby. I tried to ignore it and went inside, but the whispers grew louder, more frantic. I locked the door and tried to calm myself down, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Later that night, I woke up to the sound of scratching at the window. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned toward the noise. There, outside the window, were dozens of pale, twisted faces, staring in at me with wide, unblinking eyes. Their mouths were stretched into grotesque smiles, and their hands were pressed against the glass, as if trying to get inside. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or scream. I tried to turn on the light, but it flickered and went out. The faces outside grew more distorted, their mouths moving in sync as if they were chanting something in a language I couldn't understand. The temperature in the room dropped drastically, and I could see my breath in the air. I tried to escape, but when I opened the door, the hallway was completely dark, and the innkeeper was standing at the end of it, smiling that same eerie smile. "You shouldn't have stayed," she whispered, her voice a low rasp. "They've been waiting for you." In a panic, I rushed past her, but the moment I stepped into the hallway, I felt invisible hands grab at my legs, pulling me down. I was dragged into the dark, and the last thing I remember was hearing their voices chanting in unison. "The watchers see all." I woke up the next morning on the floor of my room, the sun shining through the window. The town was quiet, as if nothing had happened. I packed my things and rushed to leave, but when I went to check out, the innkeeper was gone. There was no trace of her, and no one seemed to remember her. It was as if she had never existed. I never went back to that town, but to this day, I still hear the whispers in the dark. I sometimes wonder if I escaped, or if they're still watching, waiting for me to return. A few months ago, I had to move into a new apartment in a quiet, old neighborhood. The rent was cheap, and it seemed perfect for a fresh start. But from the moment I moved in, things fell off. The building itself was ancient, and the hallway always smelled musty, as though the walls had absorbed years of forgotten memories. My neighbors were friendly enough, but there was something unsettling about them. Their eyes were always a little too wide, and their smiles a little too forced. I tried to adjust, but the apartment never felt right. I started to hear strange noises at night, footsteps in the hallway when no one was there, scratching at the walls, and whispers that sounded like they were coming from the vents. I chalked it up to old plumbing or just my imagination playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. One night, after hearing a particularly loud bang from the kitchen, I decided to investigate. As I stepped out of my room, I saw a shadow at the end of the hallway. It wasn't a person, it was a shape that moved unnaturally, like it was gliding across the floor, its long limbs stretching and contracting as it came closer. I froze, my heart racing in my chest. The shape was no longer just a shadow, it had taken form. It looked like a man, but with features too distorted to recognize. His face was hollow, eyes sunken, and his mouth stretched unnaturally wide. Terrified, I backed up into my apartment, slamming the door shut behind me. I tried to call the landlord, but the phone line was dead. The only thing I could hear was the sound of nails scratching at the door, like something trying to get in. The next morning, when I checked the hallway, it was as if nothing had happened. No scratches on the walls, no strange marks on the floor, everything was perfectly normal. But as I passed by the other apartments, I noticed something unsettling. The door to the apartment next to mine was wide open. Inside, the lights flickered, and the air felt colder, thicker. I went in, calling out to the neighbors, but no one answered. The apartment was empty except for a strange symbol scratched into the wall, one that I didn't recognize. The deeper I looked, the more I noticed these symbols everywhere, on the ceiling, on the floorboards, even in the cracks of the door. The apartment was marked, as if someone had been trying to keep something inside. I ran back to my own place, but when I tried to leave the building, the door wouldn't open. The walls around me seemed to close in, the air growing thick and suffocating. And then I heard whispers, louder than ever, coming from the vents, from the walls, from inside my head. The voices were calling my name, pleading for me to stay. The last thing I remember is the apartment door creaking open by itself, and a cold hand reaching out to grab me. I woke up outside, on the sidewalk, with no memory of how I got there. The building was gone. Just a vacant lot. I've never returned, but I still hear the whispers at night, and I swear sometimes I can see that distorted shape at the edge of my vision. I know it's still waiting for me to come back.